Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It's an honour to speak in the House today on this very important bill that will certainly impact Canada for generations to come. I will be splitting my time with the honourable member from Foothills. And so it really is about the internet. That's what we're talking about today, and it's such a marvelous thing. It's led to the creation of Canadian content being shared around the globe. It is truly the definition of free market, merit-based, hard work, and consistency, what it can do for Canadians and their content to share it globally with the world. From the palm of your hand, all you need is the internet or a data subscription package, and you can share your ideas with everyone with the push of a button. It really is an incredible time that we're living in, and it's only been about 15 years that Canadian content creators, producers can share their ideas so freely and so easily all around the world, which really begs the question, we've had this much success, we have this much freedom. Why is the government looking to regulate that? Why is it looking to put constraints on the freedom that's generated so much success for homegrown Canadian content? That is the question that we're looking to answer today, and the answers I've heard from government have not satisfied me that this bill is worth the risk of what it may do and what it will likely do to Canadian content creators. And through this piece of legislation, the government, in essence, is about to give itself authority to control what Canadians see on the internet. So rather than Canadians getting to decide what they see, it'll be the government dictating what they see when they open up their smartphones, when they pull up their YouTube app. That will be dictated based on CRTC criteria, and I will go into that in a minute. And it won't just impact what you and I see online, Madam Speaker, it'll also impact the content that Canadians themselves put online. And thousands of videos from Canadians is uploaded every minute. So we're talking about a huge impact on Canadian content creators and those who enjoy watching that content. And it's not just the Canadian content within our own national borders. It's anything that you're looking to view on YouTube from around the world that will be regulated by this bill. And so why are they doing this? Well, the Liberals are claiming that this is, they're the government and they're here to help content creators. They want to promote, as they say, Canadian content with government regulation, which as a Conservative, that immediately brings up a lot of red flags. It also brings up a lot of red flags for Canadian content creators, regardless of their political views. And how are they going to do this is what really is the concerning part of this bill, Madam Speaker. The bill gives the government, certainly through the CRTC, the power to force social media platforms, streaming platforms, to manipulate their algorithms so that the discoverability of what they deem Canadian content is sort of pushed up the ranks. And so this is concerning in a sense that the CRTC, you have to remember, the Canada Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, which controls what you and I see on traditional television and radio and has done so for the last 50 years. It's really the ultimate gatekeeper of content in Canada in the traditional formats. That comes into play in Section 9 and 10 of the bill. It's called discoverability regulations. And as I mentioned, that's what's really going to determine what we're seeing when we open our YouTube page, for example. And it's going to be based on what is Canadian content, which is yet to be defined, which to me really means it's going to be some Ottawa bureaucrat deciding what is Canadian content. And from what I understand, things like Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale, which is a world phenomenon Netflix show from her book that she wrote, of course, very notable and famous Canadian author, that wouldn't really be considered Canadian content. So that wouldn't be something that's promoted based on these discoverability rules. And you would think that if this was for Canadian content creators to sort of help them, give them a boost, that Canadian content creators would be over the moon about this, but in fact, it's quite the opposite. There's been over 40,000 content creators. 40,000, and it's incredible because there's a lot of content creators, but not that many. People who actively contribute online, looking to influence and share their ideas. 40,000 of them in Canada, affiliated with Digital First Canada, signed letters calling for the discoverability rules of Bill C-11 to be removed from the bill. Again, 40,000 people who will be directly impacted by this, who are supposed to be the ones that the government's saying it's helping, said we don't want this. That, to me, in itself is enough to say that maybe we should park this bill, shelve it, throw it in the trash for good. But the government's continued on for the better part of the last 3 years. And it's not just Conservatives or these content creators that are sounding the alarm, it's other experts in this field as well. Scott Benzie from Digital First Canada explained, most Canadian creators do not care solely about the Canadian market. The platforms are built for global discovery, local discovery, which is what Bill C-11 will target and promote through the algorithms and the manipulation of them. is a recipe for failure that jeopardizes successes like the Indigenous creator renaissance, Canadian musicians seeing global recognition, and the world-class gaming industry. We've all had success without the need of any government control from the CRTC. Maria Wolf for the Canadian Press, who did extensive research on this, said YouTube itself has warned that Canadian digital creators including influencers and streamers, could lose foreign revenue if the government forces digital platforms to promote Canadian content. And that is because the proposed legislation would force YouTube and other streaming platforms to actively promote Canadian content, which risks downgrading the popularity of that same content abroad. And again, it's important to know the data from YouTube says that 9 out of 10 people watching the stuff that our Canadian creators put online are not from Canada. So this has serious consequences for those who are looking to be successful online. It will limit their global audience just based on the basic algorithms of YouTube. And again, a lot of money and livelihoods are dependent on this. The number of YouTubers from Canada earning $100,000 or more is growing steadily every single year. People are already having a lot of success, again, without the government's control and so-called support, Madam Speaker. Morgan Fortier, co-owner of the CEO of Skyship Entertainment, said, "We've seen firsthand when barriers are removed and Canadians are given equal free access to an open platform and a global audience, they can take on the world," she says. For Canadian creators, YouTube is a level playing field on a world stage. It doesn't matter who you are or what you look like. Any Canadian with an idea and a smartphone can be a creator and find an audience on YouTube. That's what it is today. That's not what it will be tomorrow, Madam Speaker, whenever Bill C-11 passes. She went on to say, if this bill passes as written, the CRTC could determine what content should be promoted in Canada through discoverability obligations. This approach puts the regulator between the viewers and the creators, handing the CRTC the power to decide who wins and who loses. So obviously this will have an impact on our Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the freedom of speech that we enjoy. And Michael Geist outlined this very well. Michael Geist is the foremost expert in this area in Canada. He said, to be clear, the risk with these rules is not that the government will restrict the ability for Canadians to speak, but rather that the bill could impact their ability to be heard. In other words, he says, the CRTC will not be positioned to stop Canadians from posting content, but will have the power to establish regulations that could prioritize or deprioritize certain content, mandating warning labels or establish other conditions. The government has insisted that this isn't the goal of the bill. He finishes by saying, but if that's the case, the solution is obvious. No other country in the world seeks to regulate user content in this way, and it should be removed from the bill because it does not belong in the Broadcasting Act. Many, many people have outlined the threat that this poses to free speech. And as someone who loves our charter rights, that is of grave concern to me and the Conservative Party. And certainly the elephant in the room here, as Monica Auer says, who's the Executive Director for Forum for Research and Policy and Communications, she said, if the government bureaucrats get to choose what contents to push on Canadians, there's a very real risk the government will be tempted to use its filtering power to silence its critics, which we've seen since time immemorial from governing authorities looking to quash dissent. It's happening right now in China and Russia, North Korea and Iran. Why would we open the door in Canada for a government to do that? I really don't understand. But yet here it is in the bill. And so if we don't need this, then why are we doing it? Content creators don't need it. They've had lots of success already. Why are we doing this? I don't know. I've yet to be convinced of the need for it at all. And I'll just conclude, Madam Speaker, with my final minute here on a quote from the leader of Canada's Conservatives, who said this very well, and the threat that this poses to the liberties that Canadians enjoy and the success that they've received online with the freedoms we, at least today, have for now. He said, we live in a free country. Every day, ordinary Canadians should be allowed their own megaphone, and the only limit on how loud and how vast their voices should be whether people choose to listen to them. Everyday Canadians should be able to decide what they like by voting with their clicks. That is the kind of liberty we should extend to the Canadian people. In the marketplace of ideas, there is no role for state coercion and intimidation. There is no role for nameless, faceless government bureaucrats to decide who is heard and who is not. Everyday Canadian people should have the freedom to do that for themselves. Madam Speaker, after 8 years, it's time for a government that protects freedom of speech and consumer choice and encourages Canadian creators instead of getting in their way. And that's what Bill C-11 is going to do, and that's why Conservatives will fight it every step of the way, and we will repeal it when we are in government, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much.